So in this segment, I'm going to go over what I had to do to get all of the old wood out of the boat. And I kind of had to walk around the boat and look at all the pieces and figure out how to get it up on some sawhorses where it was stable, and then assess how am I going to get all this old stuff out of there. Because I didn't want to just trash it, I wanted to keep the majority of the pieces in reasonably good order so that I could use them as patterns if I needed to for new benches and floor segments and transom parts and whatever. So I didn't want to just destroy it. So I figured if I'm going to have to keep track of what's where, I better label it. So I took a marker and went around and wrote all the sides of everything. And then I started going through the piles of tools and figuring out how am I going to get this stuff out of there. So I tried grinding bolts, I tried pulling bolts, I tried using a wrench, I tried using a socket, I tried using screwdrivers, I tried using, every trick in the book until I figured out one at a time how to get each thing either loose or cut so that I could get the pieces out. And then one at a time, went through the shelves, went through all of the seat benches, went through all of the hardware around the outside of the perimeter, and had to get somehow, some way, get all the old bolts and screws out until I was down to the floor. And some pieces of the floor I could get under and some pieces I couldn't. So some the screws would come out and some had nails and some were all rusty and some were bent, some I had to cut. So everything didn't come out pristine, but one step at a time I had to use what tools I could figure out to get all the old screws out enough that I could take the wood pieces out and then lay them out kind of in the same pattern on the ground. And sure enough, it took some time, but I got all the pieces out of the boat and then had to figure out how to get the rest of the sides off. Okay, so we've been working for a while. Took a lot of grinding and chopping and pulling and shredding. But now, all the old wood is out, except for the little strips that held things in. We still got to take off the side rails, and those are probably going to have to be ground off because those bolts are too rusty. But now we're starting to get down to a hull. We can get this power washed out and see what's left in there that works and what doesn't. See what has to be welded or riveted back together, and then we can go from there. But we're making progress now. It's starting to look like we're getting down to it. Today we are working on taking the rest of the original wood off the boat. You can see I got most of the pieces out. The pieces from the stern and the benches and the floorboards. It's been a major hassle getting this stuff out of there because everything was so rusted and corroded that it wouldn't turn. So, for example, screws like this, those rusty bolts, you'll strip out that screw with a screwdriver long before you get that to break loose. And if you're trying to heat it with a torch, this old wood will catch on fire. So, as you can see, it rained the other day and the boat's full of water, but that's a good test actually because it means all the fixes we did on the bottom and the rivets we replaced means it's holding water, it's not leaking. So today's project is to get those old handrails off. And I've started on this side and I want to show you kind of what I've had to figure out how to do to get some of this stuff out of there. So the trick I've discovered, like in these pieces, there's no way I could get a wrench underneath these bolts in a way that I could get them to break loose. And the wood was held in multiple places, so I found this keyhole saw that I had. It's supposed to have a drill bit in the middle, but if you take the drill bit out and lock it, it gives you the ability to cut a hollow hole. So I was able to use this and out cut a ring of wood around each of the bolts or screw heads. And then once the wood was loose, I could pull it up and then I could use the grinder to cut the bolts off. So that's what we're doing here. As I went through this side already, and you can see it nicely cuts the screws out, and now everything is going to be pretty loose except for where these bolts are bigger than my saw. So I'm going to have to probably break this apart, and then I'm going to use the grinder and cut all of these old bolts that are rusted and take them apart till I get down to bare hull. Then we can power wash the inside and clean all the old paint and crap out and be ready to actually make some progress.
Okay, so now we got the outer piece of wood off. It's a few chunks here and there. But now we can get access to the bolts. So we're gonna take this grinder, which is just a cheap one from Harbor Freight. Set this so that I can clamp on it and pull it out. And I want to be far enough out that I'm not going to hit it with the blade. Okay, so I just got done taking off all the wood, taking off all the railings, and power washing it. So now we're down to getting close to a naked hull. Now I'm going to have to go through and take out all these old wood runners. It's all rotted out. Pick out all of those Timsit seals on the inside of the rivets. Get rid of a few more bolts and screws I haven't cut off yet. And then we can start patterning and get ready to actually work on rebuilding it.